Welcome back. This video is an introduction into newborn metabolism. So let's start off. What is metabolism? Well, metabolic processes are constantly taking place in the body, and metabolism is the sum of all the chemical reactions that are involved in catabolism and anabolism. Anabolism requires energy in the form of ATP, reducing power, and small precursor molecules to build complex tissues and molecules. Conversely, catabolism requires nutrients in the form of carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and oxidizing agents to break down molecules and release stored energy. Both processes are regulated by enzymes and hormones, and both sets of reaction are critical to maintaining life. Metabolic rate is another important concept. Your basal metabolic rate describes the amount of daily energy expended by humans at rest in a neutrally temperate environment. About 70% of all daily energy expenditure comes from the basic functions of the organs in the body, and another 20% comes from physically being active, and the remaining 10% is necessary for body thermoregulation or fetal growth. So normal fetal growth reflects the interaction between genetically predetermined growth potential and other factors from the fetus, the placenta, and maternal health. There is a primary phase of cellular hyperplasia occurring in the first 16 weeks of pregnancy. And between 16 and 32 weeks, there is a concomitant phase of hyperplasia and cellular hypertrophy, with an increase in the number and size of cells. And from 32 weeks, there is a cellular hypertrophy phase, with a rapid increase in cell size. Fetal demand for nutrients coincides with this, occurring primarily during the last half of gestation when 90% of the fetal growth occurs. And remember, fetal growth rates therefore are not linear. Instead, growth accelerates as gestation advances, demonstrated by this growth chart. Fetal nutrient uptake and growth is influenced by a range of factors: maternal nutrition and health, uterine blood flow, placental nutrient uptake, metabolism and transfer. Remember, the fetus is dependent on the placenta for its glucose, amino acids, free fatty acids, ketones, and glycerol to grow and develop. We also consider umbilical blood flow and the fetal endocrine system. So what about transitional events? Well, in the perinatal period, the mother supplies glucose to the fetus, and for most of the gestational period, the normal lower limit of fetal glucose concentration is around 3 millimoles per litre. However, at birth, the umbilical cord is clamped, and this disrupts the infant's connection to the placenta. This means it's no longer supplied with glucose. For the first few hours of life in a normal term neonate, blood glucose levels can range between 1.4 millimoles per litre and 6.2 millimoles per litre. By 72 hours of age, fasting blood glucose reached normal infant, child and adult values. But normal healthy infants will experience transient hypoglycaemia as part of that normal adaptation to extrauterine life. Because we do not routinely measure blood glucose concentrations in healthy infants without risk factors for hypoglycaemia, it's difficult to define normal blood glucose levels in that first 48 hours of life. Low blood glucose concentrations cause a surge of insulin and other hormones that stimulate glucose production via gluconeogenesis and glucogenolysis and enhance fatty acid oxidation. This provides the infant with an endogenous source of glucose and other energy substrates necessary to sustain its metabolism. The result is the gradual rise of blood glucose levels over the next several hours to days. Low glucose levels are also thought to stimulate the neonate's appetite and help the neonate adapt to intermittent feeding. Any mechanism that disrupts this sequence of physiological changes puts the infant at risk of more severe or prolonged periods of low glucose. There are a range of newborns who are at risk in the immediate neonatal period. Infants who are intrauterine growth restricted, of a diabetic mother, or large gestational age, late preterm infants, and preterm infants are all at risk. Breast milk. Breast milk is the ideal food for newborns. It's 87 to 88% water, it's 7% carbohydrates, 1% protein, and 3.8% fat. And this is essential to meet the newborn's requirements for energy so that metabolic processes can be undertaken. Mature milk contains 65 to 70 calories per 100 ml and is about 50% of the total calorie supply is fat and 40% is carbohydrates. So carbohydrate. Lactose is the major carbohydrate constituent of human breast milk, and it's the most abundant nutrient in breast milk. Lactose is digested by lactase, which is present on the apical surface of enterocytes in the small intestinal brush border. Lactose is readily digested in almost all infants. However, the lack of enzymes to do this can cause various symptoms such as lactose intolerance or malabsorption. We also have protein. Protein in human breast milk is a mixture of whey and casein and various peptides. Casein is micellar, present in the form of clots or curds if you've ever seen any infant vomit, and it's not easily dissolved. Whey is in liquid form and it's easy to digest. The whey-casein ratio varies according to the timing of breast milk. In colostrum, the ratio is high. It could have almost 90% whey and 10% casein, but this gradually changes to about 60-40 in mature milk. And the proportion of whey is relatively higher in human breast milk than in infant formula, where it's about 20%. And this is why you might have heard people say that breast milk is easier to digest, or alternatively that formula milk fills babies up. And in some ways it does, because the casein that clots or curds in the stomach makes the stomach feel fuller for longer. And fat. Fat plays an incredibly important role in the nutrient supply in infants. It's almost 50% of their total energy content. Fats in human breast milk are more easily digested and absorbed than those in infant formulas, due to the presence of bile salt stimulated lipases that complement the pancreatic lipases. Fat content in human breast milk is also closely related to maternal diet and weight gain during pregnancy. And finally, we've got vitamins and minerals. In most cases, human breast milk contains enough vitamins to ensure normal growth of the infant. However, vitamins D and K may be insufficient in infants who are exclusively breastfeeding, and they may require supplementation. So antenatal interventions, how can we ensure that we promote a good transition to normal regulation of blood sugar? So breastfeeding education, giving people information about how to breastfeed, what to expect from infant feeding to ensure they get off onto a good start and we avoid babies becoming hypoglycemic is essential. It may be appropriate for some women where you know that you're going to need to monitor newborn blood sugar, you know we're going to have concerns with the feeding, to have colostrum harvesting done before birth. And finally, management of gestational diabetes is important to make sure that women have well-controlled blood sugars to prevent neonatal hypoglycemia. So key points to summarise. Fetal demand for nutrients occurs primarily during the last half of gestation, when 90% of the fetal growth occurs. Healthy infants will experience transient hypoglycemia as part of a normal adaptation to exuterine life, but we should identify at-risk newborns as early as possible to ensure they get targeted support, and all infants should have feeding support early on to ensure that they are not at increased risk of hypoglycemia.